is this the saddest like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers game that we're going to see? I think that when you sent me the worksheet for this game, I think like that's what you said. Like it's not fun that like this is the least excited we could be for a Brady Rodgers matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it's got one of the lowest game totals of the week. It's the lowest implied game total the Packers have had with Rodgers as starter since week 1 of 2014. That's when like the Legion of Boom was at like their apex, and they never gave up any points. And then this is the lowest implied total the Bucs have had with Brady as their starting quarterback. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, with everything we have going on, I mean, the Packers right now are definitely in this transition stage of trying to figure out what they have in their wide receiver room. I mean, after Allen Lazard, they rotated basically every guy into the lineup. They're really relying on just short throws. Aaron Rodgers has the highest rate of throws at and behind the line of scrimmage right now. And then the Bucs they've had a really hot run these last 2 years where they've been one of the least injured teams in the NFL. And that's a big part of what goes into every NFL season is how healthy can you be throughout the year. And the Bucs have really come out of the gates and they've just been wounded the entire time. Like it looks like they might get Donovan Smith back, which is a positive. We don't know what receivers are going to dress in this game at this point. Because you've seen like even last week, you play a good team like the Saints. I mean, you just have no weaponry to move the football. The offensive line's banged up, and when they play these good defenses, because the Packers still, despite what happened to them against Justin Jefferson in week 1, they've got plenty of talent to combat these guys that are going to be dressing for the Bucs this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, again, like I said, it's hard to talk about what this offense is going to look like when you don't know who's even going to be on the field. Like after week 1, we were talking about Julio Jones might be back. The running jet sweeps for him. He looks healthy. And then and then he doesn't play.
The full Julio experience.
Yeah. So who knows? I mean, when you're signing Cole Beasley, and he could like potentially be on the field for the game, like the week you sign him, is probably not the greatest look, even though like Cole Beasley is the small white slot receiver that, Brady has worked with like his entire career. So maybe that will help. But yeah, and it's just the Tampa Bay offense, like they're still trying, right? Like there's some deep shots to Rashad Perriman, which are still happening, right? Brady's still getting the ball out quickly, still throwing the ball deep. So they're trying to do the Brady thing. They're, running more than they probably should, which has kind of been a Tampa Bay thing on early downs pretty much the entire Brady the tenure also. But I think that was probably a little bit more of protection, as in we don't have anyone to throw to in week 2. So especially with the once Evans was out of the game. So I think we'll see some interesting things there. On the other side of the ball, like one of the reasons I'm not too panicked about Tampa Bay as a whole is because this defense is playing like really well. I think we saw it I'm not totally sure what the Saints were doing. Like Jameis was just like dropping back and just launching it and with no chance of any of these being completions. I think I think if you looked at fantasy football and fantasy football Twitter at all, you saw like the 330 air yards that Chris Olave had.
We call them prayer yards. Those ones,
but like none of those were going to be receptions. He got that one at the end of the game, but like there was a point in the game where Olave had like a 24-yard ADOT and had like 3 catches for 30 yards. So it's just this. I'm not sure what the Saints were doing on offense, but I think when you look at when the Buccaneers were able to confuse them, like this isn't a team that's blitzing at as high of a rate as they were in the past. They had one of the highest blitz rates last year. They're still at 24.7% for True Media, and that's 12th. So it's still top half of the league, but it's not nearly what they were doing with Todd Bowles like last year and the year before. But they're still getting pressure on a third of opponent dropbacks, which is 8th. So they're still figuring some things out. I highlighted a play in 1st and 10 where they forced Jameis to throw one of those interceptions to Jamel Dean, and they have Tryon Shoyinka on the inside of one of their defensive tackles, and then they have that pre-snap look, and then they're also running a stunt with Troyanka. They're figuring out things to do, without blitzing as much. And they had a couple plays where like Devin White is delayed blitzing. So that like changes the look too. So they're doing a lot of fun things on defense. And I think that's still where the talent is. That defense has been relatively healthy for the most part. And so I think like that's going to give Green Bay some problems. Although when you look at it, like Green Bay's, I think, figuring out their pony personnel a little bit more with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon on the field at the same time. We saw it work in the red zone, where I thought like if that's where they were going to heavily use that, like that's where it would be. And I think we saw the jet sweep pass to Aaron Jones that went for the touchdown. So I think they're figuring it out. And I think like both of these offenses are just kind of trying to figure out what they are right now, especially with the personnel that they have.
Yeah, the Packers right now through 2 games look like they are completely dependent on like big Aaron Jones plays. Because the only time they really moved the football a lot against Minnesota was when he touched the football too.
Yeah.
So
it's a tough place to live.
It is, yeah. And, Aaron Jones is an excellent football player, but like it's a very tough spot through 2 weeks when you look at like the only times they've really kind of like sustained like stuff is when he's just popping huge plays. So yeah, this isn't the kind of team that's going to give up like big plays to running backs either, the Bucs. I mean, now Akeem Hicks is out, so maybe they're going to run the football a little bit better. But yeah, it's a tough way to live for the Packers. I mean, they need to figure out what's going on with this receiver room. I would love to see them play just Romeo Doubs more. Just let him play at this point.
Yeah.
Like, just let him play. Because when he's played and they've actually thrown the football to him, he's looked the part all the way going back to the preseason to the first 2 weeks this year. But they're trying to figure out what they've got here, and they're rotating all these guys in with Sammy Watkins and Christian Watson. I mean, just let him play. Try to find something here that sticks, because you have to be able to generate big plays. And that's something that we haven't seen 2 weeks in outside of Aaron Jones plays where he's getting stuff after the catch. And that's just a really hard way to sustain in the NFL, even with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, because we know Rodgers isn't really turn the ball over.
Yeah. And that's one of those things, right? He's not going to be putting passes in dangerous spots. He's not going to force it to these wide receivers. And the only way you're going to get, the chemistry is if these guys are on the field. So yeah, like you said, like these young guys probably should be playing a little more. You can't also be running the offense through whatever version of Randall Cobb you have at this point.
No. Yeah, the Bucs though, big picture, I think they're, for them to have 2 wins right now, gone through what they went through, and if they can pull this out against a team that they're probably going to compete with for the number 1 seed in the NFC, like we know Godwin's come back. We know Evans, obviously he's suspended. He's coming back. They're going to get these guys. They're going to get guys back.
Yeah. And then if the offense, however long this lasts, can just kind of skate by, for kind of a lack of a better term, if they can just survive while they're figuring this out, I think that the defense is going to be good enough to keep them in games. So they don't have to, they're not going to have to be winning shootouts in a way like some other teams might have to be if they're dealing with the injuries that they are. So I think real excited to see like what this defense is going to do against Rodgers, because like Rodgers is a don't blitz quarterback, and like that could have been a problem for Tampa Bay when like all they did was blitz. But now, since they've kind of figured some things out without that, I think it'll be a little interesting matchup there on that side of the field.